Okay, so quickie sharing this morning that just came up and it really came through now clearly um, and it's a beautiful recognition and and understanding. Okay, so this is about the power of being present, of bearing witness for others and ourselves, and how this works over time and space. So how this works in uh, it is not subject to time and space because okay. Yeah, because bearing witness, which is the neutral perspective, the consciousness that is very close to the 0 point, to source, and is coming through the heart, it's beyond time and space, or at least it can overcome the 3D time and space. Okay, so this is how it showed up. So it began with when I make my videos, I do my sessions and I do my channelings, higher self, or higher frequency, higher consciousness, collective consciousness that is coming through. And yeah, okay, let's not get into that. Yeah, so I just call it higher self, even though I don't know, maybe it's, it could be from a different rishi group, but even so, then what I'm getting is, so far I haven't like felt that I have channeled like a different being or so. It always felt like me. But then what they're always also showing me, and what I'm also getting, is that when there is resonance in the heart, when the being is coming through the heart, and if it can come through me, I have access to, there's resonance within me into that frequency, so that can come through, and my mind can process that current, and so it could be also another being that is not in my direct soul family, which would be the rishi family tree, from the 15th dimension down. At the same time, it's all part of God. And, the rishis are, they're not on a soul level separate from all the other rishis, and and it's conscious, and consciousness is not separate anyway. So I think it's also possible to be channeling other beings and or other consciousnesses of greater beings, or of greater collectives that perhaps are not like in the model that I understand of, monad oversoul, then the avatar oversoul, and then the rishi oversoul. It could be in the next rishi, So it's kind of like trees. So it may not be on the same tree. Like if I'm a leaf on a tree, then the leaves that are on my little twig, that's going to be the closest family. And then when you go to to the twig, and you go to the next, or to the next little bigger branch, and then you branch off to another twig, and those leaves, they're also connected. And then you go to the bigger, so you're still on the same tree, and how far away from your leaf is it, but you're still on the same tree. It could even be another tree, but their roots are connected, And it's not about the physical. Anyways, in the physical, there is this apparent separation. But on the finer, you go finer into the light bodies, you can see how it all is connected, how the energies, and especially with the trees, you can see this, how, the roots, the light, the photonic light is then flowing into the other tree, and there's communication and all of this. These trees are in reality, always, if you go onto a deeper, which is higher dimensional reality, which always is the law that breaks the one underneath, and rules the one underneath and has the one underneath within it, there it is not, at some level, you will see how it is one body. Okay, that's what I wanted to say. Okay. So the channeling, yes. And then I was getting in several times, and actually that I mentioned it, that I spoke it, and that it came to me like, okay, this is really happening. This is something, and it was spoken that, because especially in the healing sessions, especially in the sessions where I feel so much healing happening and higher frequencies coming through, I always feel this like, it's not just for me, and there's a reason, why I'm sharing this. And that the viewer, I'm not saying that the viewer is feeling this, because that depends on their perception and where they're at. However, that this field is accessible the same way to the viewer. It's not separate over space and time. And that tuning into the video, through that medium of the video, they can have full access to that healing. And I'm just getting the confirmation of that, to those frequencies of support. Of support for consciousness to awaken within us, for our soul to come to embody. Yeah. And then I would, I would express that also, because I would feel that, also the thing is that I would feel that the future viewer would already be in the space now, because I felt, sometimes I'm aware of that, and I'm also, I'm aware of that what I'm feeling now in the space, there's presence, and that also has to do with the future viewers that are participating, that are bearing witness. Yes. And so this concept of time-space thereby also is being brought more and more into our awareness. Okay. This is exciting now. And it's just really come through into my awareness this morning. So there are two other instances where this was shown to me. And the strongest one where this came through was with Isaac Mars. So Isaac, I watched, he wrote a book, he's on YouTube, and he's done some interviews, and I watched 2 interviews, I think, with him. Yeah, a couple of interviews, and then he shared his story, and as I watched him, there was recognition of the heart. He's a brother. And he shared his story where there was a moment that was a pivotal moment for him. Where he was in a highly dramatic situation. He was sitting in a car, and it was surrounded by policemen, and they actually had guns pointed at him that were unlocked. Okay, so it was a highly dramatic situation that was triggering a lot of fear. And he mentioned how that was that pivotal moment. Okay, I'm just going to go and relax now for a moment. I can take time to share this because... It's not just the words that are spoken. It's so much more coming through in the frequency, in the frequency. And that is code that is also unlocking. And this is not something that is consciously perceived, but it works on the unconscious when this is watched. Yeah. Okay. So it was a moment that if he would have caved into that, to that surge of fear that situation triggered in him, it would have gone in a different way. It would have, gotten more dramatic, or continued in that fashion. And who knows? At the same time, that would have been then, this is how it works. It's then what? In other words, it doesn't mean it would have really gone bad, because everything that we experience ultimately leads to our liberation and awakening. And that's why, it gets loud and dramatic, so that we have the chance to wake up. It's part of the awakening process, even though, like, coming in the phase when we are still raw and we are getting conditioned, then the drama is our conditioning, and it functions as the compression of our consciousness and the densification of our consciousness, that we then have to later, or will later, unpack and unravel. We have to go back down into all the trauma, where all that energy is packed in and it's locked in, because we couldn't, at the moment of its perception and reception of that energy, of that inverted energy, fear-based, separation from God, from soul-based, we could not bear witness. We were pulled into it, and we felt it. And we were overwhelmed by it and traumatized by it. And we could not hold space, and we could not process it. It could not be part of the flowing current. So it split off energy. And that's the division within us, which causes us to go into density. And this is part of the embodiment of the soul into a inverted 3D body. So this is 3D, in the lowest of the low that it could possibly go. And I'm just getting, that's the 666, because it's a frequency. It's actually a hertz or something. It's a I don't know if it's hertz. I don't think it's hertz. No, forget about hertz. But it's some kind of it's a number that stands for a frequency that is the lowest, the densest that we could go. Okay. In the physical. All right. And then comes the time. So that's like pulling the soul like into the density, out of itself, and into separation. And that's a sense. That's a perception. And that's trauma. And that creates that compression within us. And that's where we're imprisoned and locked in the mind and in the whole body, in all of our chakras. And then comes the time when through life will then, later on, because then it always repeats, right? It's a loop, because we're stuck in that loop, and we repeat all that trauma energy, because we always have to go back to it, because we always have to go and pick up the pieces of ourselves to bring them back to us. That's the that is the soul shard retrieval, or what is also done in shamanism of the soul retrieval, yeah, that's basically what healing is. It always is that. But there's so many ways that this can be orchestrated. It doesn't have to be shamanic, but that's the principle of it. Okay, and so life will give us a little bit more space, a little bit more space, and then it can come back. And even though it'll come back so many times, depending how strong that charge, because this is charge, compressed energy is charge. Well, I call it charge, because it's like compression of energy. It's going to make that energy, in a way, it's like it makes it angry, it makes it hungry, it makes it even more intense, even more afraid. And there's a charge there. And it's also, it rules us. Like when that's triggered, when it has still a certain strength intensity, it takes us into a whirlwind, and we do not behave consciously. We do not act. We do not have the wherewithal to act from consciousness, from the where there is bearing witness, and there is a reaction that's like automatic. So we're on automatic pilot. And but every time that happens, even though we think maybe, oh, I'm just repeating and repeating and nothing is happening, and when am I going to get free of this? When can I ever liberate myself from this? Every time that happens, a little bit of consciousness is retrieved. A little bit is retrieved because there's a touch. We touch back into that energy, that trauma, and so a little bit is retrieved. And so in the beginning, it may seem like emptying a lake with a teaspoon. And it's like that. Okay, anyways, I have so many images for it. All right. The iceberg, and every time we touch it with our warm hand, with the presence, even though in the moment we touch it, it's like, oh, that's cold, but the moment we touch it, a little bit got melted. Yeah. And back into the water, and we are the water, and we're of course also the frozen water. But the frozen water, that's the part of us that is stuck in that energy and in that identity, that was molded and impacted, imprinted and conditioned through those dramatic situations, and the situations that were coming from already separation from soul and God, and one, that unity consciousness, and we're coming from fear, and then brought us into it. What were imprinted us, conditioned us into that energy. And then in life, as this repeats and repeats, every time we get a little bit more of that, it loses its drama, and so we get a little bit more of the bearing witness ability, which they also call nowadays, referred to as choice points. Okay, so let's go back to Isaac. So he's sharing his story of this dramatic moment, and then as it peaks, all of a sudden, in that fear, it's like within him something opens up, and there's a calm, and there's a power that comes through, and he's not afraid anymore, and he can speak from that truth, from that alignment, from that power. And the words that he speaks, they now come from, not from fear, they come from his true self, his aware, awake, true self. They come from his soul. They come through from his higher self. And that moment changed everything. In that moment, yeah, the scene changed. It relaxed instantly. They put the guns down, and it was able to be resolved. So, and then he mentioned that he had a short video of that situation on his Facebook page, and so I went and I watched that, and you know, I'm a empath, very well, very strong empath. And so I was watching that video, and I was thinking that the moment would be shown where this opening happened, but it was before that. Just short video clip of showing the situation, and he was in a lot of fear, and I could feel that. So my whole body was feeling feel that fear. At the same time, I had already recognized him as a brother, so there was like, my heart was going out to him. You know, I had already felt his heart, so my heart was literally going out to him in that moment. And when the video was finished, I was thinking, why would he? You know, I had witnessed him, I had perceived him as a very aware, awake being. And I just was wondering, why would he put this video, keep it on his Facebook page that has, where there's so much that has a very, it's a difficult, very unpleasant, very intense, fearful energy. Why would he keep that there? And I couldn't reconcile the two. And then this is what, and then my higher self, just like, it came in and it said this. But the thing is, even though it was a recognition in that moment, there's still a sliver in me that was like not sure about it, you know. But today it was like it anchored in. So okay, let me just make it a little bit. There's not so dark today. One moment. A little bit lighter. At least a little bit lighter. Okay. And then they said to me that they said, look, when you were just watching that video, you bore witness. Your heart went out to him. You were present with him. There's not even though at the same time I was feeling it, and I was also feeling the you know, my whole body. I mean, I was shivering inside, and my guts were cringing, yeah. But I was sitting safe. I was sitting safe in my, you know, in my home, and I was not afraid. So I was bearing witness to those feelings within me. I wasn't afraid of these feelings within me, and my heart was connected with him. And so they said that I bore witness, and and that I, in that, helped him in that moment to hold space, because it was a lot. It was a lot of fear that was, you know, open, that showed up. And even though at the same time, the cringing within me is also by resonance, it's not necessarily, it can be that there's a sliver of that potential still also within me, and that was triggered. But the amplification, it was no, it's not amplification. It's by resonance, So it's not like I take any fear on in that sense. It is that I hold space for it. And it was like, there was a weight, let's say it this way, there was a weight and I helped him carry it. By bearing witness, by watching the video, and by not, I wasn't going into judgment or I didn't have any judgment or pushing him away. It was a heart-connected bearing witness. And they showed me, and this is the part where I wasn't like sure if maybe is this really true, or I wasn't 100% sure, because I didn't want to want that to be an ego thing, and it's not an ego thing. It's not an ego thing. It's the power of the heart. It's the power of the heart space, where it's the 0 point in the middle. That is no time and no space, and all time and all space. It transcends time and space. So that there was a portion, even if it's a sliver of me, that was there, present with him in that moment, and helping him hold space for that fear. And that then they showed me, like what I got, what they showed me is that he, whether that's conscious to him or not, probably not, or this is, possibly not, but he is guided to keep that video on his Facebook channel. Other people will watch it that have a heart connection to him, that feel a resonance with him, and then also will bear witness. They also will not judge him. Judge him. Why would they judge him anyways? But if there would have been judgment, then that is of course not, that's the opposite. That's adding on to the pressure, so to speak. That's adding on to the division. But yes, and then what he was sharing about that moment in the interviews, of saying that there was this opening within him that allowed him to hold space. And that opening, of course, it came from his higher self. Yes? At the same time, they're showing that the whole thing, the whole loop, which is also time-space loop, where by keeping that video on his channel and other people watching it and bearing witness to that moment, they support that higher self within him. So it's like, that's the amplification. That's where that word comes in. It's an amplification of his higher self. Yeah. So it's it aids in amplifying his higher self by resonance, because it is the higher selves, is the souls of them through the heart connection. And this can be very subtle. But the bearing witness, the neutral witness, is already heart. As I always think of Deva Premal's one of her first albums called Love is Space. God, it's so dark. It's so dark, but let me see. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Okay. So I guess why I didn't like it didn't fully arrive home yet was also because I thought, oh, I cannot take that away from him, that it was also that I had something to do with it, that I was helping him, it was all him, it was all in him, it was all his higher self. Yes, of course it was all his higher self. At the same time, this is how it also works. This is how help can come, or how it's orchestrated, and this is also how consciousness wakes up to itself and shows itself how how it works, the workings of unity consciousness and of healing, and all of this. Yeah. And then also a similar situation where Todd Medina from Soulogy Network, whom I have been his shows I've been watching for years now, like 6 years, or 5.5 or whatever, something like that. He was also in a similar situation that he shared, and I was listening to his sharings, and I was listening to it just audio, just lying down, listening to it. Okay, so and what he was sharing was, this was last year in summer, when he out of the blue was arrested, put into the trunk, actually. Unbelievable story. And there was also no reason to, it was this whole dramatic, when we meet, there's this moment sometimes in our lives when it's an initiation. It's an initiation, yes. And this is also the initiation schools of the old in Egypt. And also all the shamanic initiations, they're all about, they're all set up in ways so that we meet our fears. So we have the chance to hold space for them and not succumb and be devoured by them. And that, because this being able to hold space for our fears is what then brings the breakthrough into liberation. And that is the recognition of who we really are. That is the recognition of our soul. And in the times of Egypt, it was referred to as the plasma being. Yeah, I'm not going to get into that now. Yeah, so he was in a very dramatic situation where he was sitting actually in jail, unjust, of course, completely unjust, and even illegitimately. But he was yeah, I don't know. They kept him there for some time, and then he was released. But it was like, and him sharing the story. So he was also sharing like a very dramatic for the human being, for the body, a very hugely unpleasant and dramatic situation. And how it was also this on the one hand, being stretched to the max, being challenged to the max, the human being, the human mind, you know, that could easily have fallen and succumbed for that, and parts of that, you know, might still be doing that also. But what was stronger, and this is both in this now in showing in the stories of Isaac and Todd. Todd also shared that what was stronger was his soul. Throughout the whole time, already when he was lying in the trunk, tied up, there was knowing, there was presence. And it's coming through now. So that allowed him to hold space for it. So it allowed him to walk, you know, to walk through that portal of initiation. To be aware that this was an important initiation. And Todd is having spoken to so many people on his network in the spirit of soul awakening, of soul awareness. So many people were listening to his story when he was telling the story. And I was lying in bed so enjoying this story, like when you watch a really good movie and it's got everything in it, right? It's got like the good story and the suspense, it's got the heart, it's got the hardship, you know, the challenge, and but at the end of it there's redemption. And so I was hanging on to every one of his word, and I was completely present. I saw it all in my mind's eye. I witnessed it. I bore witness. And then it also came through now that this is also so many people listened to his story that are heart connected with him and that were bearing witness to him. And that was support for him as well. And I think why I didn't want to, in the beginning when it came through with Isaac Mars, why there was a little bit of, you know, even though the recognition of this phenomenon, if you like, came through and was brought, it was literally, I mean, this was like shown to me. Was because, wait a minute, I don't want to take credit. You know, I don't want to take credit away from them and say that I had anything to do with it. You know, and that's, of course, that, well, now I'm being made aware that has to do with egoic mind. That was the egoic mind. Yeah. And it's like in me, there's like a fear of egoic mind. There's like a fear of that I could be coming from that and taking credit where there is no credit to be taken. And the thing is, okay, this is how, okay, how do you say it? Okay, I'm gonna let's see if I can channel this now. All right, you guys, go direct. Let's go direct. Always, when the soul comes through strong, then also what is left of the ego is in your face. It's in your feeling very strong as well. Yeah. And this is a recognition that you not just because they want to say you guys, so not just me now, but also collectively, we are being primed. We're ready to get this, because this also has to do with the transcendence of time space as we know it. Yes, and it was shown to you by yesterday or the day before by Magenta Pixie when she was sharing from the nine, which is the higher collective consciousness that she's channeling, about the eclipses and how they all the portals of the eclipses, and there are four and one is hidden five. It always seems like there's one in the middle there that is hidden, because it's a sphere, so they're kind of, yeah, always has to be that one in the middle, that actually that hidden one that is not one really. But anyways, we're not going to get into that, because it's all a portal, and that's why you can say it's also an eclipse that is hidden, because it's the same kind of a portal, like the eclipse portal that opens on those days. And she shared how on the day of the eclipse, there's always 3 days around it, because everything in the Taurus, it always clusters in threes. The middle day is that 0 point day, and that is the day where all the eclipses are in the same time, in the same space, so that you have access to your future experience of the eclipse, your future self in the eclipse, and your past self in the eclipse, and that is a portal where the access is open. And when there is heart connection, when there is bearing witness, so there's heart presence and there's bearing witness. So that also means there's a neutral seeing, and that is the I see sharp. Okay, without filter. Okay. Okay. So then your energy connects into that moment with that energy in that moment. Your soul or your higher self connects with the higher self, in that moment. And so that higher frequency of awareness that comes through the 0 point of the heart, which is love, which is also it not necessarily has to be experienced that visceral as love. It can simply be that neutral witnessing and of no separation. What we mean by that is um, um, yeah, you're not coming from ego, you're coming from the soul, so there's no separation from source. There may be, of course, that doesn't mean that you don't need to have access all the way into the 15th dimension of Rishi consciousness currents. You don't have to be running them. It's enough when you are already have the access into your soul, where your soul is free from the human identity. That's enough already. Yeah. And this will create a field that is in the now, that is to get one field that is in the now, to get in the same space, that shares space, time. And this is how we help ourselves, we support ourselves by bringing, by orchestrating this bearing of witness. and that creates then it's like midwife to soul embodiment, helping, supporting soul embodiment. And that is not taking away. It's not like, let me carry your weights and then you don't get to practice, you don't get to be strong. It's not taking away it's not coming as a savior. You're not the savior, and I think this is what it was, is that I was afraid of, no, 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 I'm not the savior, that my ego would think, would kind of take credit and take this on, like, oh, I was one of the saviors of that moment, and there was a fear of that. But that's the loop, that's the self perpetuating fear of the egoic mind. Can we get into that? Yes. Yeah, the egoic mind will latch onto any concept that will allow it to perpetuate its fear-based energy and unconsciousness and programming. And that's a part of becoming aware of it. It has to be, as it is triggered, we can become, only as it is triggered and as it is present, we can become aware of it. And it is becoming aware of it by it being louder, by it being like apparent, that we can become aware of it. And when we are aware of, oh, that was that program, and we feel the truth about it, and the truth is that the soul doesn't hold that, it doesn't share that fear, it doesn't hold that idea, then the program has no more power to pull our to capture and hold captive our awareness, our consciousness. So that is the awakening, and this happens so gradually. Well, sometimes faster. Rapid initiation now. Yes. And so everyone who is watching the video, their energy is in the field right now. So that the video, or the video of sharing a story, acts as a portal into that time space, into this time space. and the what's the word? That which is hard for the linear mind to grasp is how it is possible that in the past your memory from a certain moment that you then share in a story, and if and that you capture, for example, in a video, and someone watches that, just the same way that if we take the Isaac Mars incident, how can it be that what he felt in the past, in that moment, was that there was something present from the future? And not just his own future self thinking about that moment and holding space for that memory. Holding that memory, cherishing actually that memory in his heart, because there was that moment, the pivotal moment of that choice point presenting, where it opened up, calm, into the true self. Like he stepped into the eye of the storm. He was able to do that. And as we share our 0 point, which is stillness, in the bearing of witness of whether someone is telling a story or you're watching a video, it makes it easier from being in the in the storm of it, in the whirlwind of it, like, and you're like emotionally captured by the storm. So that means you're powerless. You're like a leaf in the wind. But if your presence, witnessing that moment, whether it's captured on camera or shared in words, it doesn't matter. Because when someone tells a story, they pull you into that. If you are, you may be pulled into that story, and then you're present there in that energy, in that constellation of frequency. You are present in that time space moment of what they're, because this is memory coming from their DNA. So it's a record in their DNA that it's like they're referring to, they are connecting into that as they are relaying it. And so if you're drawn into that, you it's like you make contact with the DNA, where with that record, with that frequency that holds that time space window. And so then, as you are present with that, you contribute, you participate with your energy. And if you bear witness, you add your stillness, which helps to calm down the storm and helps whoever's telling the story to find their eye of the storm, and for their higher self to come through. And this is what we do for each other. And it always works both ways. It always works both ways, that higher self is held space for, or is allowed through more, has ability to come through more. That space is created for higher self. which is also consciousness, is born. Your unconsciousness wakes up.